Christy. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to day one of my 2025 holiday card series. Today I'm going to be creating using Lawn Fawn's Cozy Cats, Backyard Bird Feeder add-on, Frosty Fairy Friends, Car Critters Christmas add-on, and all the speech bubbles. So I've stamped the images on Catherine Pooler Favorite White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. So I'm going to start with my first little kitty, and I'm going to use some E40 shades to turn this one into a Siamese cat. I'm using E40, E41, E42, E43, and E44. Started with the E44 and put a little bit of darkness on the top of the ears, the tip of the tail, and around the center of the nose, and then I'm blending out with the E43. Then I'm going to take that E42 and bring that down into the rest of the body while blending out the areas that I've already colored. And then I'll come in with that E41 and just pull that down a little bit further. I still want to leave a little bit of white space right around the dark patch on the muzzle and on the chest area, and I will soften that into the white with the E40. Then I'll keep the E43 and E44 and add in E47, and I'll use this for one of my birds. I wanted it to look like an American robin, so I added that E47 on the tip of the wings and the top of the head, and I am going to come back and add that to the tail as well. I'm blending out with the E44 for my midtone, and then I'll use the E43, and I'm going to leave a little patch on the chest and belly that I'll come back to later on. I also want to use these shades to do the wooden stand that is holding up my bird feeder. So I'm adding in some wood grain detail with that E47, and then I'll start to color that in with the E44 on the right hand side and blend out with the E43 on the left hand side. That just gives it a little bit of dimension and interest. Then I will switch to a different brown combo for my next kitty. I'm going to use some E30 shades, E30, E31, E33, and E35, and I'm going to do a two-toned cat. I'm going to give him a couple of darker brown patches, and then the rest of him will be kind of like a creamy tone. So I placed that E35 anywhere that I wanted those darker patches to be. I'm blending out with the E33. Then I'll come in with the E31 and soften that up a little bit more. And then I'll use the E30 to just add a little bit of shading to the rest of this kitty and leave some of the plain white cardstock showing through for the highlight. My third kitty, I wanted to do, again, a two-tone, but I wanted him to be a soft gray and white. So for the gray areas, I'm using T0, T1, and T3. Starting with the T3, I'm going to add a patch around each ear and coming into each eye. I'll leave a white strip down the center of the forehead. I'm also going to leave a white tip on the tail and also the belly area. So I'll blend out that T3 with the T1 and then soften with the T0. I'm also going to use these shades for one of my birds. I have some coloring charts sitting off to the side for myself to refer to. I like to stamp out a particular critter multiple different times and color it in different ways, and then I keep that in a little photo albums that I can refer back to it. So I do have 12 ways to color cats and 12 ways to color birds, and so I'm just referring back to that to kind of pick and choose my combos for today. I'm going to do the next little bird in some purple tones using V20, V22, V25, and V28. So I use the darkest 3 shades for the cap, wings, and tail, and then the lighter 2 shades on the body. I also left a bare area on the belly, which I'm going to fill in with some pale pink shades. I'm actually going to use the same pale pink shades for all 4 of my birds just to kind of tie them together. I'm using R00 and R01. And I really liked how that looked, but it wasn't quite strong enough on the robin. It didn't look quite right to me. So I am going to bring in a 3rd shade in just a minute. So I'll finish up my last little bird, even though I haven't colored his feathers yet. I'm going to bring in the R02 on that robin, and then I just decided to throw a touch of that onto the other 3 as well, and then just blended that back out with the first 2 shades that I had used. I also wanted to use those purples for some of my accessory images. I wanted to go with some non-traditional Christmas colors for today, since it's still fairly early in the season and not quite Christmas time. Just kind of helps me kind of roll into the season a little bit better if I don't go straight in with traditional colors. So I am going to use these purple tones for the ear muffs and the main part of the hat, and then the little stripes at the bottom of the scarf for my 3 little kitties. And then I'm going to switch to some blue tones. I'm using B000, B91, B93, B95, and B97. And I will color in my last little bird, starting with that B97 on the tail, wing, and cap. And then I will blend out with the B95 and then the B93. I threw in a little B91 and then a touch of that B000 right around the belly area. I'm also going to use the B91 and B000 to color in my snow. And I'll add a little color to the plexiglass window of my bird feeder, just keeping that really close to the edges and leaving the center white. Then I'll also bring in B99, and I took away that B000, and I'm going to use these shades for my birdhouse. So I'm starting with the B99 for that, adding a bit of darkness to the edges and also to some of the lines that are drawn there to indicate the different pieces of wood. And then I'll blend that out with the B97. Then I'll come in with the B95 and just continue blending that out, making sure that I'm coming over the edge of the previous shade so that I'm pulling that darker color into the next shade and just bringing that down. And then I'm going to come in with that B93, and I'll actually fill in with that shade. I ended up not using the B91 on the birdseed feeder at all. I'll go back to my toner grays that I used on the 3rd kitty, but I'm going to go with a darker combo using T3, T5, and T7 for the roof of the bird feeder. That way it ties in nicely with that kitty, but doesn't look exactly the same. So again, just starting with the darkest, the T7, blending out with the T5, and then using the T3 for the highlight. And then I need to color the bird seed itself, and I used Y13, Y15, and Y28. That Y28 has kind of like a beigey brown tone to it, so it's just going to give things like a little bit more of a golden hue, especially mixed in with that Y15. And I'm going to do the other little pile of seed that is separate off to the side, exactly the same. Then I let that dry for about 30 seconds to a minute, and I'm going to go back in with that Y28 and the Y15 and add a little bit of dot detail to give it some extra texture. I also colored in the larger seeds with that Y28, And I decided that I wanted to have a little bit of brown in there as well, so I used the E35 from my second kitten. For my little Christmas wreath, I'm going to use G21, G24, and G28. I'm adding that G28 all around that bow where that would be casting a bit of a shadow, and then all on the inside of the wreath, blending out with the G24, and then filling in with the G21. And I'll also fill in the center with the same shades that I used on the bird feeder, since I want it to look like we are seeing that through the hole in the middle. I'll bring in some slightly brighter pinks and use R11, R20, and R22 to color in my kitties and birds' rosy cheeks. And I'll also do some of the kitties' noses, the two on the right hand side, starting with that R22, blending out with the R20, and then going around the edge with the R11 for the cheeks. I didn't do the little kitty with the scarf up high because you couldn't really see it. I just added a touch of that R11 at the very top. And then I'm also going to use these shades for some of the accessories. I'll do the mittens, the band and pom-pom on the hat, and then also the main part of the scarf, and of course the bow on our little Christmas wreath. Starting with that R22, blending out with the R20, and then I'll use that R11 for the highlight. So like I said, not really traditional Christmas colors, but I do have a touch of it in there with the green of the Christmas wreath, and then I'm just using this kind of salmony pink in place of red for the bow and the accessories. And then I'm going to bring in some YR04. I'll just color in all 4 little beaks for my birds and trim these images out with their matching dies. For my background, I started with a piece of Bristol Smooth Surface cardstock and trimmed that down with the largest of the small stitch rectangle stackables. And I'm going to create a little background on here using the cloudy stencil and some shaded lilac and speckled egg Distress Oxide ink. I'm going to blend the two together. I didn't want just the purple. I thought that might look a little bit too, unnatural on its own, but adding just a touch of that speckled egg in there almost makes it look like twilight is falling. And so I am just going to use both of those shades together. I go in first with a little bit of that shaded lilac, then I add a touch of the speckled egg, and then I go back over it with the shaded lilac to blend it all together. And then I'll just continue turning my stencil or flipping it over as needed to get a different cloud formation and moving my way down the panel. And I'll do that until I've got 4 different cloud sections on there. I'm going to do one last one there. And then once that is done, I will also add just a touch of ink down at the bottom so it isn't so stark white in case any of that final cloud shows. I'm going to do some splatter detail using just the shaded lilac. I'll press that onto an acrylic block, add a bit of water to make it more fluid, and then I'm going to tap that off the edge with a thin paintbrush so I get a nice fine little spray of speckles. I'll set that aside to dry and bring in my next panel. I use the same stitch rectangle stackables, but then I also use the stitch hillside borders for the top edge, and I'm going to use just the speckled egg to give it a little bit of a frosty glow. Then I'm going to pull in some pattern paper. I'm going to use one from the new All the Sparkles 6x6 pad, and then I've also got a striped piece from last year that I ended up not using from the Candy Cane Lane 6x6. I'm going to pop my card base in my MISTI so that I can stamp a sentiment on the inside. I'm using lilac cardstock and I'm stamping in Dusty Concord ink, and I chose another one of the Sweet Kitties from the Cozy Kitties stamp set and Have a Perfect Holiday. Then I'm ready to start adhering everything together. I'm going to take the candy cane stripe and glue that to the front of my card with the glue tube. And then I'll take the blue and gold piece and add that across the center. And by themselves, it was kind of giving 4th of July, so I decided to add a little bit more of that lilac cardstock in the center to kind of break up that combo and also tie into the coloring and the background. So I'll add the background piece right over top of that, make sure it's on there nice and centered. And then I'm going to pop the snowdrift up with some Scotch 3M foam tape. So I'll just line up those bottom corners, press that into place, and then I can bring in my images. I'll begin laying down my scene with the pole of the bird feeder. I'm going to use liquid glue for the part that covers the snowdrift and then foam tape for the part that goes up into the sky. And then I've also added some foam tape to the back of my birdhouse. And then I realized as I was pulling off these release papers that I should have left a channel there for that popped up stand, because otherwise it's going to be 2 levels of foam tape and it's not going to be flat on either side. So instead I just trimmed down that pole. It just made it a little bit easier. And then I could pop that bird feeder up in the center of the card. Once I've got that placed, I can start to figure out the rest of my scene. I'm going to have 2 of the little kitties sitting down below the bird feeder and 1 sneaky little kitty sitting on top of it. So he's the one that has the scarf on because he's kind of trying to disguise himself up there, hoping that the birds won't notice. I'm also going to add a little bit of snow to the top of the bird feeder and also to the ledge where the kitty is sitting. And I'm going to add that little Christmas wreath right behind the kitty's ears. So I just tucked that in before I pressed that kitty firmly into place. Then I'll take the little purple bird and I'm going to have him sitting on the other end of the bird feeder, kind of looking over at that kitty like, who do you think you're fooling up here? And then I'll add a little pile of bird seed and another little bird down below. And once I see that I like how that is looking, I can commit to that and start gluing those items down into place. I just love these cats and birds together. I think they're such a natural little fit. So I thought this was just, a fun little humorous scene. No birds were harmed in the making of this card, and no kitties either. I'm going to add a little speech bubble that says, "What the peck?" next to the little bird that is staring at the kitty. And then the kitty is going to get the Happy Holidays sentiment. I've got 2 more little birds that I'm going to have flying up above because they are also kind of trying to get the kitty to come down from his perch and leave them in peace to their seed. And then we've got 1 little bird down at the bottom, very nonchalantly eating his seeds because he just loves seeds and he's not bothered by those kitties anyway. Of course, this card needs a little bit of sparkle, so I'm grabbing my Stardust Stickles and adding that to all of the snow. I also dotted some into the bird seed. I'm going to put it on the pom-pom and brim of the hat, the earmuffs and the gloves, the stripes on the scarf, and also the bow on the Christmas wreath. And that is going to finish off this card. So I'll lift that up so you can see it in a bit more detail, give you another peek at the inside as well. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, please give it a like and leave me a comment down below. It will also be on the Lawn Fawn YouTube channel today, so if you'd like to watch it again, you can check it out over there, and I would so appreciate your support. Please be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already and ring that notification bell if you want to be alerted when I post new videos. The products I use will all be listed and linked in the description bar below in case you'd like to pick up anything for yourself. And I'll also add the videos from the previous 2 years of holiday card series on screen in case you'd like to continue watching. Thanks so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you had a good one, and I'll see you soon in the next. Bye-bye.